Ready to rock.
All right. Hello, everyone. The question of the day. Will you become more dependent and more dependent faster on AI than you did with your cell phone? That's one of the topics we're going to discuss today, along with has the AI hype finally ended or what? So I'm Mike Russell here with software guru and AI expert Stephen Bowman, and we're going to jump into those things. How are you two doing today, Stephen?
I'm thank you for the intro. I'm really fired up about this topic. As we discussed before we jumped in here. Um, for me personally, I'll jump into it's almost a guarantee, right?
Almost a
Guarantee.
guarantee of what?
My guarantee is that people become dependent on their digital AI digital assistant, and that's going to come in all different names and styles and flavors here in the very near future. They're going to become more dependent on their AI assistant faster than they became dependent on their mobile phone. So, right, you and I, you stretch back further than I do. I've got some grade coming in, but that being said, I miss the days when a telephone was tethered to the wall. I miss the days when a telephone, even a mobile phone, was just a phone, right? All of a sudden, out of nowhere, a smartphone enabled all of the things that we all use it for: apps, the entire internet, connectivity, etc. And I believe that AI is changing the interface between humans and how humans interact with technology. Technology can be anything. It can be an app, it can be the internet, it can be research material, it can be an AI assistant that performs business operations, personal operations. I think it's just a short matter of time before your smartphone is your portal to not just information, but task and information. Hey, let's say your assistant is named Sally. Hey, Sally, I totally forgot. Can you please book me that flight to Dallas next Tuesday? And Sally says, I already did, and I got you a window seat, aisle 14. It was a $30 upgrade, but you told me that would be okay. Would you like me to make an adjustment? She read your calendar, she read your email, she knew what she was supposed to do. She already booked it ahead of time. It's already paid for. You didn't have to think about it. And those workflows, that interaction, that interpersonal, I'm going to take care of this for you from a piece of software is months away. Now, that month might be 24, but we are getting close. And that's what I'm talking about when I talk about how, let's face it, we're humans. We're looking for an easy button, right? We're kind of lazy. And when new technology comes around that facilitates our ability to be lazy, skip steps, save time, however we look at it, we jump all over it. This is exacerbating that exact same behavior with things that are more complex than just checking an email
Well,
or,
that's what I was going to ask you, right? So we have Siri, we have
yep.
Alexa, we've got, Google Assistant. We got a number of different kind of voice activated assistants that can take care of some of those tasks, particularly on our phones or mobile devices. So what's the leap here, in going from that? Because I can say, hey, do I have an email from so and so, or especially with text, right? Send a text to and then read it off, read it back to me before you send it, whatever. So those are tasks it's taking care of. What's the big deal? What's the big leap for AI?
So I'm actually going to share my screen real fast. I didn't anticipate this, but it's a great question. And the biggest bridge I think that needs to be built and crossed for the thing that you're talking about, for that chunk of functionality, if you will, is software. So AI is just software, right? It just so happens to be pattern matching, algorithmic, deep math software. And we've talked about that before, about how It's got this immense database of words, and it matches patterns, and it matches the patterns on your words to patterns on words from the internet. It grabs all of that, or all of its training material, excuse me, which a lot of its training material was the internet. And then it guesses on what its answer and output should be, and it gets it right quite often. Let's see if I can figure out how to share my screen. Well, for some reason or another, I'm having trouble finding it. Oh, there it is, right there. The big green button that says share your screen. So, so this is going to go into a presentation that I'm putting together right now. And what this is this is the Gartner hype cycle that I have abused terribly, right? So the Gartner hype cycle starts down here with a technology trigger. That technology trigger is AI. We ramp up to this peak of inflated expectations where everybody is so excited about what generative AI can bring to the table. They all have heightened and inflated expectations. Oh, it's going to be able to do all of this. It's going to save my rear end. It's going to do all the work for me. I'm not going to have to do anything. It's going to make my company $37 million extra this year. And then we come off that high and we crash into the trough of disillusionment, wherein we realize, wait a minute, our expectations were way overhyped, way overbloated, and it doesn't do all of the things that I expected it to. Well, normally on the Gartner hype cycle, there's only one output here. And what I'm suggesting, particularly with AI, is that we are going to have second and third generation technologies sprouting out of generative AI like it's going out of style. A perfect example of that is what we're talking about today, which is AI agents. And the key factor, kind of the key that unlocks the dam when it comes to AI agents, is the ability to create software without an application developer, or to massively speed up application development. So the interfaces between your phone, where you can talk to Sally, your assistant, and she knows how to go and interface with the credit card companies, the airlines, websites that do all of that information.
Right.
That's all software based. And the days of human beings sitting down, putting their fingers on keyboards to write software are very low. My expectation is that within 12 to 18 months, traditional application development is going to be way on the downslide, like almost obsolete, because number one, software development is expensive. Number two, it's buggy because humans create it. And number three, it's a white collar job that AI does really well. If you don't believe me and you're hearing the sound of my voice and you don't know what Microsoft Copilot is, go check it out. It literally writes the next line of code for you, and then we'll tell you why. All you have to do is ask it in English or whatever common language. Hey, what should I do next? And it'll do it for you. It's that scary already. But how we go from where we're at to assistance, right? Because like you said, Siri's there, but Siri's not a generative AI tool either, right? Siri's more pattern matching, kind of dumb artificial intelligence, but not for long, not for long at all.
Okay. So with this change to being dependent on, meaning you can leverage AI for a bunch of stuff, are there any downsides to that dependency? I mean, what are some of the pitfalls that people might be thinking about, as they adapt it? Because every wave that comes out of the current AI wave is going to probably follow the same cycle, right? It's going to be hype, and then it's going to go down, and then we're going to be productive with it, and it's going to generate something else. The trend will always be up most of the time. So what's the drawbacks? What might be some of the things that we have to consider while we're building these things?
Sure. So I think the biggest, in my opinion, one of the largest, not detriment, but one of the largest concerns that I have is so if we look at the technology adoption curve, if you're not familiar with the technology adoption curve, well,
What you just showed, right?
yeah, it's a bell curve. I've actually got one here, part of my
Oh,
presentation
okay.
slide.
You're talking about something different, all right?
So in the technology adoption curve, there's a great book, Crossing the Chasm, early 90s. It talked about how you've got innovators and early adopters at the beginning of the bell curve, and you've got early majority, late majority, and laggards. And every time a new technology comes out, it has to what they call cross the chasm, which is, here, I'll just find one for you here. Let's see, here we go. There's a great picture of it. Let's see.
Is crossing that the chasm, is that related to the prior chart you showed? In other words, it takes the early adopters and, enthusiasts to get it past that, you know, slough of despair, in the bottom.
Yeah. So the chasm is the place between here, right here, between the innovators and the early adopters, right? Oh, and it's a spot where technology implementations can get swallowed by the abyss. So the innovators come out, they've got an idea, they bring it to market, and the early adopters go and snatch it up. And we hit that spot in the technology hype cycle, or I'm sorry, the Gartner hype cycle, where we hit the trough of disillusionment. And you have to be able to get past that into enlightenment, understanding, and then
Right.
implementation in order for it to make it into the early majority, the late majority, and the laggards. And that's how technology adoption has looked, give or take, since the late 80s, probably stretching even further back than that. With the speed of implementation with AI, it's not just how fast AI is moving. AI is pushing the accelerator down on the pace of change for technology as well. The biggest concern that I have personally is anyone who is in the late majority or laggards, in my opinion, are going to be wiped out because the AI technologies are moving that fast. And when I say wiped out, all I mean is that the early adopters and the early majority are going to have strategic advantages to acquiring the market share of the late majority and the laggards. Because by the time the late majority and the laggards go to implement, to first go through their change process, start looking at new technologies, start adopting those new technologies, implementing it into their business, implementing it into their workflows, the early adopters and the early majority are going to have absorbed so much market share because their quality is going to be higher, their speed to market is going to be faster, and their costs are going to be lower.
Okay, so let me try this a different way to see if I've got it. So we've got these issues with any kind of change, right? People think that, oh, this is going to be great. Then it turns out to be not so great. It takes some work, whatever, right? And you get into that trough, slough of despair, right? The slope of disillusionment.
Yep,
Then as we start working with it, we figure out, oh, it's not so bad. There actually are, we figure out how to use the good parts, just slug it through, the mud of trying to get things going. And so we get to that hump of we've got a lot of users and so on.
yep,
So, what I relate it to is um, the 80-20 curve, right?
yep,
Because with a major technology shift like AI, if you put the early adopters back up, I mean the adoption cycle again, if you don't
sure,
mind.
sure. There you go.
Yeah, so if I look at this, often you're okay, okay being generally speaking, right? If I am in the early majority at least, and maybe sometimes the late majority. It's usually the laggards. If it's a major change, major business opportunity, anything that can improve the business, the larger the change, the more dire it might be for the laggards, right? In some
Sure,
cases, it may not be a big deal. Other
sure.
cases, it's like, uh-oh, we didn't do this, and now we're either locked out of the market or we're so far behind that we're just not going to catch up, right?
Yep, yep.
So is that generally? You know what we're talking about here? When you're saying something that's significant, like I'm looking for slide 2 from the standpoint of AI, then it's going to make it worse the later you are.
So here's a good extension
Okay.
of this. And here's a good extension of this idea, this thought process, this kind of experiment, this thought experiment that we're talking about right now. So if we think about AI, let's give it a different label, and let's call them LLMs, right? Large language models, because really what I'm referring to is generative AI. So we've gone through the Gartner hype cycle. We're in the trough of disillusionment. We're coming out of that right now, in my opinion, meaning um, there's a lot of companies that have found or implemented AI solutions and they didn't work.
Mhm.
It didn't produce the fruit that they thought. They had a wacky idea, whatever it was, right? LLMs may not ever gain the traction that they were on the Gartner hype cycle trajectory to gain. Meaning, I'll probably never have my own LLM. I don't need it. It's not appropriate for me. And that's why we hit the trough of disillusionment. However, it's the second and third generation adaptations of that technology which are going to explode because of that base implementation. So, what I this is an AI podcast. We're talking about AI. We're talking about AI agents. So what that means in this context is digital assistants, AI agents, chat bots. We're going to use all three of those phrases simultaneously, right? Meaning the exact same thing. Different implementations of the same. They're all rooted in LLM technology. You're not going to get an interactive chatbot that doesn't use a large language model. That tech is not going away. However, very few people actually have the need. Very few companies actually have the need to go spend a couple $1,000,000 building their own LLM. Instead, they're going to build technology, second and third generation technology that stands on the shoulders of giants, right? It's going to sit on top of those LLMs, those large language models. And that's how the technology works right now. If you're not familiar, anybody out there hearing the sound of my voice right now, all of your chatbots, all of your AI agents, all of your digital assistants, the way that they generate their responses to sound human is they go back and they talk to Claude, Gemini, ChatGPT, or another LLM to actually generate the common language response that you see in your chat session. So we take common language, in my case, it's English. I package it up in a question. I type it in or I speak it into my microphone. I press a button. It magically gets transferred across the internet. And the LLM chatbot that is ChatGPT or whomever your vendor of choice is translates that into its model. And it says, okay, based on the pattern of the words that are used here, I think I understand what Steve wants. Here is my expectation of what will be meaningful for him. So in my case, a chatbot on my website does the exact same thing. I type into it, it sends that information all the way back to, in my case, we use ChatGPT quite extensively. It formulates an answer and spits it out on the screen on my website. But without the LLM, that generative AI portion doesn't work. Again, the LLM has gone through the hype cycle where people are now realizing, oh, my own LLM doesn't make sense, or monetizing or creating an LLM probably doesn't make sense. But the second generation use of that, being an AI agent or a chat bot, makes tons of sense for your website, your social media channels, your phone, all of those interactions. And right, when we pair that in with Microsoft Copilot, which is just a chat bot that is specifically designed to help developers write code faster and better,
Mhm.
as that starts to move forward in its technology and lean on humans less to actually do the work and do the work itself, that expands the capabilities of how those agents are now able to communicate with the rest of the world and be the interface between the technology that powers the world right now, websites, social media channels, etc., and our interface to it, which is probably going to be your phone. my gut feeling is that if you're a Trekkie, right, that little recorder that Captain Kirk had that he could wave over top of the pile of goo on the far out planet and had a chemical analysis. Okay, maybe we're not that close to it, but to be able to speak into your phone and say, hey, can you do X or Y or Z for me? It knows what you mean and it can go execute on that because it's software and it knows how to communicate with other software seamlessly without you having to tell it. That's how it's changing the interface. And that's why
Which,
we're going to be.
by the way, you may not have the tricorder yet that you're talking about, but the interface to the computer we now have achieved with LLM, right? Because they would ask the computer to do something or do an analysis or do some sort of task. But then this is, I guess, part of the big change you're going to talk about in a minute, or further, is the interface.
Yeah.
So for so long we've had this set of programmers decide what the interface to the program is going to be.
Yep.
With generative AI or large language models, we don't have to do that anymore. Now it can adapt to us, right? We just
Absolutely.
talk to it and ask what it wants to do, which is that's why I think the Star Trek you brought up actually is a great example. We're at that front part where now we're asking the computer to do some things for us and it's responding in plain language.
Absolutely. What a great point. Forever, right? When we interacted with computers, computer systems, software, technology, we had to tell it. We had to learn how to use the technology. And right now, with generative AI, it's learning how to read from us. So the great point. One of the things that I just bang this drum as hard and as loud and as long as I possibly can. Whenever you're working with AI, no matter what the interface is, whether it's a chatbot, whether it's an assistant on your phone, or whether you're in ChatGPT or Claude, provide it as much feedback as possible as you can as a human. If you don't like the response, give it a thumbs down. If you don't like the response, reply to the chatbot and say, that answer is garbage. Give it a negative connotation when you're not happy. When you are happy, tell it you're happy. Say good job. Interact with it like it's a human, because those negative interactions, those positive and negative interactions, just call it feedback. Every time you provide this system with feedback, it improves. It knows when you say good job, you're happy with the output, and it can use that as an example to provide good output again. When you say this is junk or that is incorrect or thumbs down, it then knows that did not cut the mustard. That is not the type, style, or interaction that it wants to replicate next time. And it will use that as an example of what not to do next time. When you're working with AI, provide it with examples. This is what I want it to look like. This is not, don't make it look like this. In my marketing, whenever I work with anybody for marketing for AI, we provided a list of words to never use. This is not in my vocabulary. Do not use these words.
Good point.
It's just another piece of that feedback loop. Context, feedback.
It just strikes me. I'm talking about being able to converse with it like a human, but this is one of the areas where it is very much like a human, right? Because it's that old thing of, reward what you want more of and don't
Yes,
what you don't, I mean, it's
absolutely.
sort of the same thing, right? I mean, any human being, typically, if you keep getting beat up about doing something in some way, eventually, some of us may be slower, but eventually you'll figure out, that's not the way to do it.
Pick me. Yeah, 100%, 100%. This is right. The beauty of AI, in my opinion, is that these things are happening in the background, whether we realize them or not right now. The powerful thing I feel about what we were just talking about providing feedback, is that that puts you in control. It's just an iteration, right? Another iteration. And these large language models are improving, the technology is improving because of the volume of feedback loops that are being provided. The volume, think about how many times, right? ChatGPT just announced that they had 200 million unique users every month. I can tell you, me personally, I use it
That's a lot of people.
intraday. I use it intraday, right? And the conversations that I have with AI and the things that I work with AI, it's not usually, I mean, there are some, I've got little GPTs where it does this little, one little task for me, that kind of stuff. But for the most part, I'm asking questions. I'm getting answers. I know I want to go deeper on this. That doesn't sound right to me. And I've told you guys some of the hacks that I use consistently, where I'll give it a lot of information and then I'll say, please ask me any additional questions you need to gather as much information to give me the best quality results. And then it usually spits out 5 or 10 questions and I'll lose track. So I turn around and I ask it and say, okay, ask me these one at a time, interview style. And it does. When it gets done with that, it goes and compiles all the information, all the context I gave it, all the answers to the questions that it asked me for more context, and then it puts out the results. And then we go back and forth and iterate on that until I'm happy with it. Those interactions that say, no, this isn't right, or that stinks, or this was great, it's recording all of that. My guess, I don't know because I don't work for them, but based on the way that we've tuned our chatbots, we have our chatbots evaluate interactions per session. So if my session is 10 questions, at the end of that session, when it thinks the session is over, it evaluates whether it was positive or negative and throws it into a database. We then go grab the top 10 most recent positive sessions and use it in context when we go to have the next conversation.
I see.
We're teaching, it's learning. This is what a positive interaction looks like. Do more of that, please.
Okay.
I'm on the bleeding edge, right? The guy's on the cutting edge, way out there on the fringe. I'm positive they're way ahead of this. And that's why there's no doubt in my mind that for ease of use, for catering to lazy humans, and for quality of results, time savings, money, all of that stuff, you are going to be dependent on an AI agent in your life in the next year, year and a half max, coming out of your mobile phone, almost guaranteed. I mean, I won't even say almost, I'll just say guaranteed.
Yeah, I'm gonna go back just to finish off the part about why we think it's important to be aware of this. I mean, the first question to always answer is this pertinent to my business or my organization or my life at all? Because if it's not pertinent, then none of what we're talking about really applies, right?
Absolutely.
If it is pertinent, though, then there's this thing which is the 80-20 principle, right?
Yep.
So most people don't understand the idea because they haven't seen it projected that way. It's the curve on the right. Everybody kind of gets the idea of 80-20, right? This is a good reference, Richard Koch's book. It puts it in lay terms, all the applications to it. But the most important thing is if I think about if I have 20 things, or plus or minus, that curve of market, we'll call it market share, right? If I got 20 entities in the market, all things being equal, no severe regulation that makes it the same for everybody and so on, then the people, what Stephen's talking about, if they evaluate early and determine whether AI is for them, and if it is, start adapting it to their business earlier, are going to be on the right side of this curve. And the implications of that are, that's what he was saying, is that those people are going to get the most revenue, the most market share, the most whatever. The laggards could be at the very tail end down there. Well, maybe they get a little
Absolutely.
something, maybe they don't, right? There's also the concept of the 120 curve, which we won't go into, which says that the people at the bottom are actually below. They're not breaking even, they're losing, right?
Absolutely.
So that's kind of the concept behind all this we're talking about. We're just applying technology adoption, and in particular, something that has broad implications like AI to the 80/20 curve.
Sure.
That's my
Absolutely. So let's, all kidding aside, let's take a common, a business common, one quick tiny little example. We'll fly through this here. Let's just take your business website. Somebody goes to, right now, they go to
Well, don't take
Google.
mine. It's not good. Just take another one.
Well, take my website.
Okay,
One of
take
my
yours.
websites, right? So today, most people, they'll go to a search engine and they'll run a search and it'll come up with 10 results and 4 ads on top and 4 ads on the bottom. And
Yeah,
you
right.
have to hunt and peck for information. Oh, there's a hyperlink. It looks reasonable. I'm going to click on it. Next thing you know, you find yourself at my website. You're innosoftech.com or you're at elitedigitalassistant.ai, right? You're at one of my websites. And when you want information that's on my website, how do you find it? You have to read. You have to look in the menus. I have to come up with some kind of marketing material that sticks exactly what you want in your face. Maybe it's a specialized landing page, maybe it's not, whatever. It doesn't matter. It's not intuitive most times. And as much as people want to say, well, I know how to build a web page that converts, the marketing piece, people are so over the, you have to hunt and peck, you have to search, you have to find the information that you're looking for. You got to be pretty motivated to find what you're looking for. And let's face it, again, we go back to it. Not all humans are all that motivated. The
And the worst
future of your
websites
web,
are almost impossible to find stuff on. Even it could
horrible.
be there, but trying to get to it, if they've got a lot of things
Exactly.
and just don't have a good structure, don't,
Exactly.
and
Absolutely
by the
horrible.
way, the danger that we've talked about, if I'm doing that search, just as a side note, in a search engine, a lot of those websites coming up now are AI generated by people trying to get your click. It's not even the
Exactly.
original site.
Steal as much market share as they possibly can right now in the old way, right?
Right.
So the future of a digital assistant, a chatbot, a website assistant, that interface with your business, your brand, your website, all of your services now changes to be a conversational one. If you go to elitedigitalassistant.com right now, Elite Digital Assistant AI, same site, you'll meet Veronica. The first thing Veronica does is she says, hey, if you've got any questions, I can help you find what you're looking for. All you have to do is type it in. Now, an assistant who knows my website, knows all of the things that I offer, she can guide you to exactly what you're looking for without you having to hunt, peck, search, dig, go through the menus, nothing. And you were able to do it in common language and in real time. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Easier, faster, better. That feels like it establishes trust to me with a prospect. Also, hey, wait a minute, these guys know what they're doing. And when there's trust and some level of faith that you know what you're doing, it's a lot easier to sell something. It's a lot easier to upsell. It's a lot easier to start to build a relationship with that prospect. That's why that's why I worry about the late majority and the laggards, because this is shifting and adapting for ease of use and quality of output so fast that I really believe strongly that the early adopters and the folks who implement the stuff and get it right, they're really at a significant advantage over the folks who are right now sitting on the sidelines saying, is it worth it? Or, oh, we'll just sit back and see how this thing works out. These are the people who are still, these are the phone book guys. I worry for the phone book guys.
Okay. Recognizing that some people don't know what you're talking about. Okay, we've actually covered a bit about hype and about the interface. Anything
Yeah.
else on those two subjects you want to talk about today?
You know, they're tied together for sure. The one thing that I want to just again suggest is that um, the the gains, the gains that we've got, the advancements that we've made because of generative AI right now, they're not ending. And I think a lot of people see that Gartner hype cycle, or they have the idea of a cycle in their mind, and they say, okay, well, we're coming to the end of that cycle. With the word end or ending being embedded in there. And I don't look at it that way. Again, kind of in the image that I showed, I see an explosion happening next with second and third generation implementations of generative AI. I think the gains of generative AI are just about to be realized, not ended.
Okay, so instead of stop or end, maybe people should think of pause or slower advancement or something as everything gets consolidated, as it crosses the chasm from the diagram you put up earlier. And the innovators and the early adopters actually thrash out some of the problems. So by the time you get to it,
Yeah,
it's pretty
absolutely.
usable.
Absolutely. If there was ever a time to get involved, man, now's the time because to your point, what you just said, they're definitely always going to, especially in early adoption, there's going to be some stuff that washes out. And I think a lot of that stuff has kind of run its course. And there's still 80-20. I think there's still the lion's share, the 80% that is going to stick around and be usable in the future. I believe that.
Okay, cool. What else for this session? Anything on your mind for today?
Um, I'm no, that's all of it.
For those subjects anyway, right? We'll qualify
Yeah, yeah, for
that.
this subject. Yeah, I'm working on the next one for sure. Excellent.
Okay, very good. As always, you can leave comments in the channel or send a message to Stephen if there's a question that you want to find out, either by the website or asking his chatbot. Just send
Absolutely.
him a note, or by LinkedIn, either one of us. So thank you everyone for listening, watching, and we'll see you next time on another edition of AI Insights.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Mike.